Good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Data with Casey and Klemen talking Unified Revenue View, Part 3. Happy Tuesday. How are we doing?
Doing good. Thank you.
Happy Tuesday. Lots going on, always.
Indeed. I took a sneak peek today at the next step of our unified revenue journey, and was excited to find out that we could just have some simple questions to answer for ourselves or share with others who might want to figure out how to create a unified revenue view in their organization. But it looks like no matter what kind of unified revenue view what kind of unified view we try to create, there's a lot of stumpers. There's a lot of questions that people usually don't do well with, including this first one. Klemen, walk through how you forecast quarterly revenue today. How do you guys do that over at Celestial? Klemen?
We're too small to bother with that. Really, we don't forecast. We just do our best because that's the most we can do. It's more
That's a good
of
place to start, I think.
It's more of a strategy. What we believe we need to be doing. Of course, we can review and look back if what we've been doing is pushing us in the right direction. But for us, as a small team, of course, if we would have 100 employees, you cannot afford that. But for us, as a small team and a bunch of cloud agents, it's more of a what we are doing, not 3 months in the future. I have no idea what will it be.
Yeah, what are there any? Because either it's going to be an outcome of getting to this revenue view to tell you whether or not you should be forecasting or not, or are there kind of best practice guidelines, dare I say, of whether or not you should even be forecasting in the first place?
I can tell you the experience of the agency we had, the lead generation agency we had before Celestial. It was not a huge retainer business because we were charging for meetings booked, not as a typical lead gen agency. Hey, pay us $50K upfront and we'll do our best to do whatever we can. But we didn't charge anything. We were just charging for what we delivered. So for pure value. If there were no meetings, even though no matter how much we worked, if there were no meetings, no one was paying us anything, which means it was our pure execution directly related to our revenue. So the forecast was, let's take a look at average 3 months, how much we can expect to earn if we do our best as we can per customer, how many customers we have. That's what we project for the next month. And that's how we did forecasting. Unpredictable model, because we had no financial commitment up front. We had to earn every penny. But still, the forecast was really based on activities, and assuming we keep doing the same good things, this will bring us to that.
How, if somebody would have asked you, or if you looking back, what was the confidence level of those forecasts?
The math works at the end of the day, and it's proved to work back then. We were not really off, because we realized, with some you do a bit better, with some you do worse, but on average, and that goes, if you don't have one client with 80 bringing you 80% of your revenue, then the math will work. We really had no distributed revenue stream because we had 50 active clients. The math then works. If you would have only 2, but then also you cannot do any forecasting because it all depends on one client, more or less. So, but at a steady business, the numbers should work, and I see that how others are doing the planning. But when I see things are broken, is measuring wrong things and then making assumptions and forecast on bad data or misleading data. MQLs are, I think, a really good case here, where we had a discussion with one of our clients. They were measuring, we are generating 2,000 MQLs a month, but then when you start digging deeper, only 200 of them matter, because all the others, because of definition, they're MQLs, but in reality, no, they're not ready to purchase anytime soon. So their goal of, if we do 2,000 more MQLs per month, doesn't relate to really the forecasting and making the data work for them. So when you do forecasting, in my experience, you need to think what projects your success and the revenue. What are the real numbers you should be thinking of and are good indicators for your success?
Yeah. And since you went there with MQLs, and maybe just because we've been talking about this all day somehow, in office hours today, and in the conversation I just had with Trisha about the trap of setting this and kind of where it came from, in terms of, we've been sold a model that's 1,000 MQLs, get you 100 opportunities, get you 10 closed deals, right? And to the point where we would calculate lead value, right? Lead, cost of lead, and make the math work, right? But as soon as any of these numbers, and this is usually the cause of marketing and sales misalignment, as soon as any of these numbers are not trusted, or they are not telling the whole story, because there's a sales meeting also happening where people are just sharing what's working and what's not, and yeah, this MQL came in, but I talked to their teammate next day, and that's why we sold it, but it was at the show and I didn't own that opportunity, so it didn't make it in the system. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't look like a good forecast. That's somebody we actually, if we just put the right person in the right role as the target of the conversation, instead of the person that usually comes in, right? All of these things get missed. And I think that is certainly what we're trying to accomplish when we say unified revenue view, that's sitting on top of a unified customer view. You're creating visibility over all of this context in a way that we're gonna, forecasting itself isn't inherently bad, and if you have enough data and it can help you prepare for the future, should certainly do it. But the chances that you actually know enough to forecast accurately and in a way that's not going to make bad decisions, it's rare. It's rare in my experience to see that, right? And it creates a lot of pressure on everybody on the team to just start like making up stuff, right? And it has a cascading effect.
Two
Casey,
thoughts. Sorry, Casey. Two thoughts, and then you go. The waterfall you showed, I think, is still a good model to have in mind for businesses where you do more of a transactional sales type of a process. There's pure SaaS businesses where it's free trial and $20 subscription, where you don't need to have relationship. It's really transactional. You make a decision and you purchase it. Then you can have those starting point, MQL, PQL, SQL, whatever is the flow. But in that case where you have a huge turnaround of website visitors, of everything, that model, I think, can hold. What I would be cautious is what is the data you're chasing. If you chase the wrong definition of MQLs, marketing can be super happy because they generated 2,000 MQLs, but in reality, they generated only 200 relevant opportunities. So it would be better for them to just generate 250 good MQLs instead of 2,000. So the commission and the goals of the teams should be measured and driven by the relevant data. But when you don't have the transactional sales, where it's not a straight line, a few steps, then you have the value path and the relationships, and where you need the full context, which is not just a few clicks on your website to get to the purchase. Then those models, I think, fail, and only doing the forecast with that straight view funnel, you'll have a hard time doing a relevant forecast. Go ahead, Casey.
who's usually in charge of forecasting? Please, Casey.
Who's in charge of filling it out, or who's in building the forecast? Sales ops, if sales ops exists, which sales ops doesn't always exist. So oftentimes finance, I work with a lot of startups who finance is the one building these, because those are the people who are asking for these. And I can think of a couple of startups I've worked with where finance's entire job was building and maintaining. So how long does it take was like 40 hours a week in some in some businesses. Was truly like the majority of their job.
Yeah. Seen some pretty magnificent spreadsheets usually.
Yeah.
To accommodate this. And this is one of those moments where they can only get the unified revenue view by creating the spreadsheet and then talking to every department. Sometimes they send out a template of their spreadsheet to each department, and then you fill it out and then they bring it back in. And
which is why it takes so long, because they have to you have to reformat it for everybody. Yeah.
Right. Everybody's defining, the likelihood of the forecast differently. Again, all this goes into like staging and pipeline management, and HubSpot can solve a lot of these challenges for you. But if it gets harder when it's somebody from outside of HubSpot telling you what they need, and has nothing to do with the way you're managing stuff inside of HubSpot. So what we've seen, or what I've seen, is either that means we don't care about the data in HubSpot at all because it doesn't speak the same language, or we start doing things that HubSpot's not built for inside of HubSpot, and then wondering why the rest of HubSpot doesn't work, with those things. And I mean, this is like, these things lead up. We talked about accuracy, but usually I think this is so challenging. Like, forecasts miss because we didn't do a good job of forecasting in the first place.
Well, I think one of the things is like oftentimes sales reps are rewarded for being optimistic. And even also oftentimes finance is rewarded for being optimistic. And so when the reality hits, then people are like, what happened? How? And you're like, well, because everyone's being rewarded, or maybe not so much rewarded, but punished for when forecasts are accurate, because, whoever wants to see more money in the forecast.
Right. And often that relates to like unrealistic goals. Like,
Mhm.
okay, we got to grow at this rate every
Mhm.
year. So that means you got to sell 10% more of that thing. Like, oh, what's your pipeline? Oh, I don't know. Can you sell more? Can you sell 10% more? I guess so.
I have a client whose marketing goals were like 5 times. Marketing was supposed to drive 5 times more closed won deals the following year, but they were cutting their marketing budget by 50%. And they were like, so Casey, what should we do? And I was like, I think we should look at the math there.
And probably find a different job, maybe. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah. And I've seen it go the other way too. Like, you get discouraged or punished for crushing like the forecast, because you know that I've had salespeople sandbag in this way, where it's like, if I go above and I'm not necessarily bonused for that, that's going to make next year's goal like that much higher when it's not, when I was just having a good Q4. Like, we had some random things. I've been sitting out here for a while and they came through. It doesn't mean they're coming through next year, especially when we have a 2 to 5 year like sales cycle. Right. So often I think, but when we execute day to day and we're told to use these systems in this way, it's like, oh man, we're going to miss forecast. Let's send out some emails. Like, yeah, no, that's that, like, yeah, let's move on.
And in classic fashion, we spent 1 hour talking about the first question.
All of these probably could be their own episodes for sure. When a customer is at risk of churning, when do you typically find out?
Too late.
That's answer number 1.
I oftentimes too late. I don't have a lot of clients that have Service Hub. It's just my, like, I don't know. My client base tends to have marketing and sales, but does service outside of HubSpot, if they have a service platform at all. So when that's the case, it's very difficult to get some of that context built in specifically to HubSpot. I know we talk about like customer health scores a lot, and if those tickets and things like that aren't in HubSpot, it can be really challenging.
Yeah. And good teams, like when teams are healthy and like it's growing and people appreciate like the whole process, just calling each other a lot, like when it's not in the same system, which again is like another opportunity to be like, oh, I don't want to call for the 6th time like this week, so I won't call about like where this person is in the journey. So I think this one's fairly straightforward. Of like, one of the goals of these 2 views is understand like, where is the person at in the journey with us, like trust levels, relationship levels, and like, what is the value of our relationship like with that person. And when you have visibility, like, I'm starting to understand this for a customer that we're bringing in their entire process, like full customer value platform, and like instead of figuring out the rules of everything and the automation of everything, and when this, if this, then that, we're coming to an understanding. Like if we just create visibility, like across all angles and variables, we don't have to set like a 90-day, notification, or set up all this workflow to make sure nothing's falling through the cracks. Because literally, there's no cracks to like fall through, right? And so much of this stuff is built from that perspective of like, oh, this is how we're used to it working, so we're just going to go right to the like reactivate workflows. Like, how do we, man, what was it? I think it was yesterday or maybe end of last week, like revive dead leads. Like, what's the revive dead leads workflow look like? Like, man, can we just not with workflows like that? Like, anyways, it's this straight. I mean, as you have worked with teams to clean up data, Klemen, I imagine this is often a goal of the data cleanup. Is there any like common threads of like which parts need to be cleaned up in terms of getting to like revealing this risk like faster than normal?
And yeah, part of it is cleaning it up, and the other part is enriching it with the context. So cleaning it up, deduplication of all sorts, not only context, but even companies and different entities within the same account, to have again a unified customer view. If you have that in a way that it shows you what's happening. And in terms of enrichment, the missing part, I think, is what stays in the gut feeling of people that are in active relationship with customers, and that is not transferred or even transferable to the CRM. Part of it you can probably get from transcripts and the sentiment and all the conversations, but in my experience, for all the customers, the one who is in charge of that account, they can tell you, if you ask them, are they in a good health. It's much easier to get a health score from a person managing that account than have that score as a number in the system. What's the missing part? Often it's not clear in my experience. How you can get that score right as a number score, but that gut feeling is often outside of the unified customer and unified revenue view. That's why when someone churns, there might be one person who could predict that if you'd ask them, might not think about it in that way, but all the others, it's out of blue that someone churned, but in reality it was not out of blue. Sometimes it is, yes, but often I would say it's not. It's just the context is not so clear what needs to be brought into the system so you can have that visibility.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And I think what we'd love to see you do is force the unified view. Don't force the score, right? Like, just because the SaaS tool can do the thing, don't force that. And it's so hard to stay out of that when you bought the thing, and that's your role as a marketer, as a performance marketer or customer success. Like, you got to figure out how to use the system But when we don't know, and this is why leaders have to be involved in this conversation, when you don't have the context you need to do the score, don't do the score. Like, all it does is cause bad decisions or anxiety or, a bunch of distrust in the system, right? Meanwhile, you have a meeting and, one team or one new person is like thinking they're like good to go. And then like the 15-year sales vet sees like this pattern of things happen. Like, no, they're about to churn. Like, you got nothing. There's this dude sitting over here on these emails. He said this one statement at this point and you just glossed over it. Like, if you don't get him on board, like, there's no way you're renewing, right? And that's why instead of trying to build this into things like scores or reports or automated notifications, it's again just bringing the team together with these views that can start to teach everyone like insights related to what's an early warning sign and what's not. So another thing that we'd love to solve for with unified views. What happens between deal closed and customer successful?
Ka-ching sound.
Right. On to the next one. Commission check. I think that's what happens, right? Here.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the customer's successful? I don't know. We got the deal done. I'm successful. I know that.
That's my KPI. Where to start?
Yeah, I know. I mean, again, I think you're right that is like a big challenge. I think one thing that's always been kind of interesting to me is in my own business, I am marketing, I am sales, I am service. So like it makes it very easy for me to deliver on what was promised because I'm the one that promised it. However, when those aren't the same people and, when they're not even the same teams, it becomes much more challenging to do that. And I remember when I left the agency that I worked at, one of the things I was most looking forward to about doing my own freelance was that I wouldn't be held to whatever sales had promised people. So I just think there's not only like importance in that first one about like from sales to delivery, but I think it's also really important that customer success team, delivery team is communicating with sales on what's realistic, because I think so often sales teams are selling hopes and dreams and no fault to them. That's their job.
I've seen some companies approaching that in a way of commission for the salespeople not being only based out of closed won amount, but also on 10-20% is based on the renewal or the lifetime or the year value. Because if you're a good salesperson, I mean, you can sell ice to an Eskimo, but it doesn't mean that same person will buy ice tomorrow again. Most likely not. But if your forecast is built on assuming everyone you have closed won, the lifetime value will be 5K. But because someone is closing the easy ones because they're a super good salesperson, and the real lifetime value of those is 1K instead of 5K that you projected, but you pay them the commission as they would be closing 5K, the motivation is misaligned for the salesperson, which again, you're running the company on wrong data, on wrong assumptions, on wrong initiatives and wrong motivation, which is again understand what you're forecasting on and what are the real indicators of success, not for that sales rep, but I think as an organization. And sales reps should be motivated, and the same goes for marketing. All those teams that are working towards closed one should be motivated to bring the customers which are a good fit for what you want to do, and you'll be able to generate the value you projected. If they all churn after a month, I think part of that is also with all those AI tools where you have, we have 5,000 new signups, but how many people used that tool tomorrow? 90% churned. Are you doing the right thing? Yes, you have a lot of signups, but as a business, is it helping you? I don't think so.
No, but the VCs, they want signups. That's a key metric.
Just
gotta
have the volume of users, have the audience, have the newsletter list super big, and you'll get Series B. You don't need to have revenue.
Yeah. Again, like you're not solving problems here with this playbook, which maybe that's different from other playbooks. Like not the same problems, at least. The problem that we're trying to solve here is, can you have the conversation that you need to have, like, to get to a unified revenue view? Because nobody's coming in asking for it. What they are asking for is, we want to forecast better. Can you help us forecast better? We're getting HubSpot so we can forecast better. Like, we want to see renewal patterns, right? Our handoff between sales and service and success sucks, right? We want to expand. We know we should be selling more to our current customers, right? Like, what we see in practice is like, okay, yeah, let's get Marketing Hub. And we'll set up some email sequences. And where's your customer list? Okay. Yeah, just give us the customer list. We'll set up a list. We'll start sending some emails with the products you think they should be selling. Meanwhile, you have no idea that there's just huge cracks everywhere. And there's no way that new activity is going to result in value and result in better outcomes. And you're going to blame HubSpot. You're going to blame your marketers that weren't put in a good position to actually say meaningful things to all those lead lists from ZoomInfo. And if we can't have the conversation that we need to have to get to a unified picture where we can have, like, just, look, folks, we did this. We sent to 100,000 people. And while we got some won opportunities, here's what happened. Here's like the full picture and why it was a terrible idea for us, and maybe some things we could have been doing differently while all these customers were churning, like, on the other side, right? So for our last question, how do you identify expansion opportunities? Again, like, see this playbook as just a way to elicit conversation from the team. If you can't ask questions like this and have everybody that has the answers to them, like, be involved in the conversation, like, you're not going to be able to make progress. Like,
I think you just said this, but this came up actually in the office hours. I felt like a little bit today. The way I heard some of the conversations in office hours today is sometimes we are asked to set up HubSpot to solve these systematic problems, and HubSpot is not the solve. HubSpot can help facilitate processes. HubSpot can, surface data, but if you're not if your team's not aligned, HubSpot doesn't just like make you aligned. HubSpot doesn't just identify expansion opportunities. I think now I'm feeling fired up now that I just said that, because I get all the time, like, I get asked to do lead scoring projects all the time, and like to just identify these opportunities as if they're just sitting, and like people will ask me, they're like, I know there's just opportunities just sitting in HubSpot. But if you don't have the data, the structure, the process behind it, HubSpot, there's no way for HubSpot just to like surface these things out of thin air.
Yeah. And like the answers to these questions like shouldn't be about HubSpot or the tool or the system that you're using, right? And that's where I'm just double checking. Like nowhere in these 4 questions, like are we saying the word HubSpot? Like anywhere, right? And when you say we're going to get HubSpot because we heard it will help us identify expansion or hit our goals, you're going to be building the tools out, or you're going to ask somebody else, and then this question is going to come up. And now you've got HubSpot on the brain. Like, I need to implement HubSpot. So forget about real life. We're looking at HubSpot. What can we measure in HubSpot? Okay, maybe they opened the email. Maybe they downloaded this thing. And then this happened. So that's a success milestone, and we should trigger outreach. Right? If you can have this conversation, so like the way we do value for scoping is conversation number 1 is like, and I've started saying this within the first 5 minutes of like a new client, we're not allowed to talk about the tools in this conversation. And it's uncomfortable for me too, because I can see them like want to use the tools to help explain the thing. But it just creates this scenario where we're looking at it from the wrong perspective, and we're not asking the right questions of the people who do know. Oh, success milestones? Like, well, if I'm about to email somebody, that means I saw them do this on LinkedIn, or they had this attribute, or I heard about them doing this thing, or I saw them in this community, or I just saw them at the show. Like, natural, organic human behavior starts to come out instead of like, oh, I'm not going to say that because we can't possibly track that in HubSpot. So it's not the answer that we're looking for. Right? So can we create the space for people to answer these questions? And there's no rocket science in these questions here. Right? It's can we get the answers we need from the people with the expertise to answer them?
And then create a place to collect that context so you can then act on it and create processes. A few months ago, I had a conversation with a potential client where he asked me, can you help us identify upsell opportunities from our tickets and call transcripts? If someone is asking for a compliance or a feature basically, which is part of our higher tier of engagement, this is a clear indication which can be buried somewhere. And if by some chance someone misses that, you just you lose the opportunity to upsell where they're clearly asking you to upgrade. But if you miss it because of there's no approach and any system behind it to catch that, and if you're not capturing that within the system where you can then a system of record where you can have a system processing that continuously, you're missing the opportunities. But first, you need to understand what it is, regardless of what system you use.
And you can, folks. Like, that's the key here. Like, at the end of this page, like, what your answers reveal is the next section. Like, you don't need us to tell you like what your answers are going to reveal. Like, if you are being able, if you create this space to say this stuff out loud, it's all like common sense stuff. And that's where just get it recorded. Like, it's a great point, Klemen. It's easy to just say, hey, salesperson, why does this happen? And they'll go for an hour to tell you exactly every little detail. And then you like are exhausted at the end of the hour. Everybody felt like they did a good thing, but you didn't record it. There's no framework to bring it back to and build out something so that you don't have to have that exact same conversation next quarter, because you definitely will have that exact same conversation next quarter. Like, both sides are key here. And so often, I think from SaaS and technology perspective, we come at it from the other side. Like, here's the framework, here's the report you need, here's how we're going to build it out. And now we're not able to share the details that we need to share to actually make, these systems do good work for us, and to help AI do good work for us, right? So that was part 3. I think we're halfway through Unified Revenue View series. We're all embracing the fact that it's going to be 6-parters the whole way with these views. But I think we're having some good conversations at the same time. So as always, Klemen and Casey, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks, everybody.